Or even just like we were walking by this like grandma and her grandchild on a hike, and she was like, well, slow down, won't you? Like that sort of thing of like, won't you at the end instead of, hey, like, stop it. Like, I don't know. It's like really sneaky. But, and the most famous thing that is a little easier to tack onto things is just being like, oh, so it is, so I am, so you are, when you're like affirming something back to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
I feel like they also
their
genuinely...
version of dead ass.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, basically.
It's Alex!
Episode 216 of View from 202. An exciting one. We have segments back. Segments. Remember when we used to do that way back in the day? You probably don't, because you probably didn't listen that long ago. But if you did, good for you. Because we have 3 segments today for 3 panelists. Me, Brit, Cork, and Peaches hosting this. Our middle segment, we're joined by Once a Metro's Eric Friedlander to talk Red Bull 2 and recent developments with that squad, something we haven't talked about at all this season on the podcast, so it's a good opportunity to catch up. But before we get to that, in this first segment, we are going to recap all the games of the last 2 weeks that I missed, which is Atlanta at home, SKC away, and Cincinnati also away. Am I missing anything? Is that right?
I think that's it. I mean, it was a unfortunately busier week. I think than we were expecting. We weren't able to record without you. But
and Sam is still out of the country.
Sam was, finalizing the Jason Pendant deal in France.
Yes.
So he is taking his week vacation from doing so.
That's the official story. Actually, we all know that he's actually finalizing the Isier Jamais deal.
Oh, wow.
Old timers might remember that name.
Man. That's a name.
Is that even how you pronounce it? Who knows?
God, he and Jean-Christophe Kofi are just, I don't know, sipping tea.
Most
on a
they have the
somewhere.
most minutes played for anyone who's never played a minute for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Did Kofi not get any?
No.
Jesus. Isier Jamais, I think. Was his club like Donetsk FC? I wonder how that's going.
Oh, man.
Anyone looked into
I
that?
forgot about that, too. God, I've been slacking on my Isier Jamais.
Where's the
having that on my
follow-up?
repertoire.
Does Isier Jamais have any links to like Yale University or like, Princeton or something like that? Has anyone looked into that?
Work for some NGOs.
Sam will tell us this.
Yeah, exactly.
He executive produced an Ed Norton film in the 90s. Let's see.
Friends with Courtney Love.
Yeah. But parody to anybody listening who would care about those things. But yeah, so Atlanta, that felt like, it feels like ages ago. That was before I even left the country. And
were you doing your Vermont run?
I was back from that, but I was in between my Vermont run and fleeing the country. So I didn't make it to that game because it was just a lot going on that week. But I followed along.
What a
ride.
Yeah.
This, of course, number one impression that I think anybody will remember by now is that this is the Serge Ngoma coming out party, right? He scores the winner, comeback win, down 1-0 late into the game. Is this our first comeback of the year?
There was Chicago rain game.
Yeah.
And I want to say another, but it's not coming to me immediately.
Philadelphia, New England felt like comeback wins in a way,
Kinda,
but
yeah.
we were never actually Well, I guess in Philadelphia we were down 1-0. New England it was 0-0, and then we snatched a win.
Yeah.
But I think this is the biggest like reversing it in the final 10 minutes. And from what I understand, my memory and my impression following the game as it was happening is that we sort of deserved to be down. Maybe not that Atlanta were good, but that we were profligate and sort of playing with fire. Would you say does that gel with our memory here? What do you think about that characterization?
It seemed like a game where Atlanta and kind of Struber said that he anticipated based on how Atlanta sort of stereotypically plays as being sort of the possession kind of team that can kind of sit on a knife's edge with how we play, because with a possession team, they either get themselves into trouble building out of the back and we can just feast, or if they get into a good rhythm, they can just kind of go around us and cause issues with finding the right press trigger and stuff like that. This game, they kind of surprised, and Struber copped to this after the game, that they kind of surprised with how they came out pretty direct, both kind of hitting long balls from the back, and also just kind of doing a lot of just direct dribbling. A lot of guys were just carrying the ball and going around the press that way, which turned out to be more effective in a lot of moments than you've seen from a lot of opponents at RBA this year who either try and not attack at all and just, bunker back, or they try and, pass it around and get themselves into trouble. But this game, you saw, Atlanta kind of playing a lot more, kind of just getting the ball up the field quickly any way possible, breaking the lines any way possible, and it was giving us a lot of issues early on. So, that was kind of, and it's not even like you're kind of saying, Brit, it wasn't even like Atlanta was not necessarily good, but we were just kind of like didn't have answers for what
was happening.
They were kind of turning the game on.
We were like a loose sieve.
Was there a
Sieve.
Was there a tinkering in this match? Did we change systems?
It feels like it was like months ago now, but
was there a learnings moment for us?
Yeah, exactly.
There was, and there was that if we sub in a 15-year-old, he'll pickpicket the
Careful
opponent
now.
the game.
Careful. I don't want this podcast to be encouraging any more subs than are already happening, regardless of what happened.
Well, don't worry, because I said that tongue in cheek, because there was, I think it's a trend of like, we kind of had a freak happening, and I'm not really sure how intentional it was.
We just have to be careful with
it.
Germans and tongue in cheek.
I feel like in general we've been used to adjustments all season.
Well, who's we? Is this the podcast or is this the team?
I think
genuine question.
Well, I think it's us.
Who's us? Are you talking
the
about
podcast?
us three?
Yes, that's what I mean. Like I mean like the team. I feel like shouldn't have been in a position to necessarily need that much tinkering in so many games, but we looked like we were different coming in the second half, but we still let one through. So like at the end of the day, it was just like. We're still letting these chances kind of get past, despite us looking better once we switch that through the half.
The back line definitely feels a little less secure than it did last year, kind of in general. Whereas last year they kind of had to be because the attack was, so anemic at points. But, the goal that they let in was like, besides even just like, letting Joseph have, another lifeline, which is bad enough. It was just like a cheap, soft little like kind of bounce rebound sort of thing. And just the sort of goal that we weren't really giving up last year that this year seems to be a little more of an occurrence. So there's that end of that. Obviously, I mean, maybe we'll get into it with some of these other games, but Andres Reyes is coming back into the fold. So maybe that moves the needle a little bit, but
he's back in the fold officially.
He's back in the fold just now. He wasn't yet in the Atlanta game.
Yeah,
and we were able to, just have never in doubt, throw Serge on, and he just did the business. Exactly like they wrote it up on the whiteboard.
Yep.
Just strip Alex DeJohn. Just Alex DeJohn's gonna give it up. By the way, Alex DeJohn is Dutch for the John.
Alex Oh, it's not even of John.
Oh, I was going to say like the Chris
John.
Farley thing.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's even better.
Yeah, it's the John. But anyway, Alex DeJohn is just going to be sitting there for the taking. Goddamn sitting duck. Or sitting Duke, as they say
in the
in
86th
Dutch.
minute, as we expected.
Or sit-en Duke. Just with the ball at his feet, and Serge just strips him.
Alex
and takes
is
it in.
John, but now. Oh, God.
Ich bin ein John.
I was gonna say, is Joseph like giving him more of a leash? Is that not really a long-term play for us, really, though? Too. Also,
There are no long-term plays anymore. I would like to believe that, but at
in
what
terms
cost?
of, it's not to benefit us, Brit. It's to deteriorate Atlanta and make them worse.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe. I mean, I don't. Does anything matter with them anymore? They just keep on buying random people and just asking some random.
They've really gone
carousel.
NPC with these like South Americans who they bring in.
Well, the owner is right trying to buy the fans now too. He's paying for all the away tickets, right?
Fucking Arthur.
Wow.
You did like Arthur, like President G. Like just, you asshole being nice to your fans. Like, look at this tyranny of people not being allowed to choose to pay for away tickets.
Yeah.
But
Wow. Atlanta, very weird team. Did Cameron Harper make any impression? I mean, did he start at right wing back in this game?
I think he did.
Is that
yeah,
memorable?
Yeah.
He looked fine, or like he didn't look out of place, which is I think the point, right?
Yeah, he had a lot of like in a couple of these games recently. I mean, obviously he's gotten attention for what he's added to the attack, but he's had some really good defensive moments. He'll have some little moments where you'll be reminded, oh yeah, he's clearly not a seasoned trained fullback, where he just like gets passed by in space and gets kind of wrong-footed and lost. But a lot of moments where he's just had a little bit of like tenacity and fight in him, and like kind of gotten stuck in on some tackles, made some good stops, and like that part of his game seems to be coming around more in the last couple of weeks after he's come on the scene, adding another dimension to the attack.
Yeah, it seems like he has a freedom to be aggressive, and like,
and that's the point of the wingback role.
Exactly,
kinda, yeah.
and the letting him or getting blown past. It seemed that there was also him tracking back and making sure that he's containing that defender
Right.
on all those instances, and he has the pace to do that too. So it's like, it's nice to see. I think him gelling. It would be maybe nice to see him start more. I don't know if I don't know if Dylan Nealis is necessarily a right wing back for us, especially seeing him play center back more. But
Which I guess that's a good pivot over to the Kansas City game.
yeah,
because
that's true.
He ended up, Dylan Nealis, his brother Sean got sent off for the handball, but Dylan Nealis ended up being a little bit of a minor hero in this game, kind of just, being really solid.
Insane tackle.
Yeah,
too,
yeah, playing in a central defensive role in that game, in a game where we needed to kind of just grind it out. And he was one of the main standouts in doing that. So nice little jump from him in that respect, too.
Honestly, though, I feel like Dylan Nealis and Tom Edwards are the same kind of, like, if we were to call a depth chart a
hybrid,
depth chart. Like, they're the same,
right-side
like, yeah,
defender.
they're the center back and the 3 in the back, but a right back and a 4 in the back. And that kind of feels right, I think.
So what I'm hearing is we need another 30-year-old right wing back.
Yes.
An Israeli one,
Yeah.
particularly.
the captain of the Israeli national team.
Right. Okay. Perfect. And don't need any left-sided players. No.
Ever.
Yeah. It does seem like we're pretty set on the right side, but it sounds like this Kansas City game before the red card that was it sounds like sort of forced or coerced onto the referee by the VAR was sort of a snooze fest. Is that an accurate characterization?
Not necessarily for Kansas City fans in the first half, because I mean they were getting a lot of looks. I mean, we started with the 4 in the back, which was kind of odd, which it's kind of been a theme on the show this year. This show that we just kind of think the 3 in the back look is just a better thing to start from. And it's become a little bit of I think, a consensus around Red Bull's world that that's kind of the case. But Struber decided to go with the 4 in the back to start here against a Kansas City team that kind of, emphasizes the wings and has guys cutting in from those areas where we've traditionally had problems playing 4 in the back. So kind of a head scratcher there, and it, didn't really work out. And eventually Struber changed the formation about 20, 30 minutes into it, took Omir Fernandez out and put Harper in. And that's what it was, right, Peaches, I believe?
Something like that. Yeah, I think so.
Because it was Dylan Nealis.
Omir Fernandez was definitely out. Yeah,
Dylan
and then Harper
Nealis, because the starting fullbacks and the 4 in the back was Dylan Nealis on the right and Tolkien on the left. And, put Harper in for Omir to have, 3/5 across the back. And, things settled down a little bit from there. But then it became just kind of like a sluggish, kind of choppy game. It was It was really hot in Kansas, apparently, and it was kind of became sort of a theme of the last couple of weeks and a theme of the season, I guess, that Kansas City was just furious that they thought that we were just the foulingest team in the history of fouls. And just breaking the game up with that. And maybe that's true, but it was a pretty ugly game from our end too in that respect. But in the midst of it, we were able to snag a goal through a dead ball situation, through a set piece. A lot of credit was given after the game to Troy Ave Lassane, the newest Troy in Red Bull's land. He's apparently been in charge of coaching set pieces and organizing set pieces this year. And both Struber and the players who were interviewed after the game all kind of credited him for a lot of the there's been a little bit of a comeback this year of kind of creative sort of Rube Goldberg set pieces. And they've been working out in some cases, and Aaron Long scoring to get the winner in KC was maybe the most shining example of that so far.
Hey, look, 2015 Jesse Marsh, that was an underpinning of that season was that we were good on set pieces, right? And it's nice to see that that's all coming together. But it's also interesting that they're giving the credit directly to Les or whatever.
Lassane.
Yeah.
In Charleston Huguenot pronunciation.
Exactly. And, it's interesting that was very explicitly put out. But also, I really just did not enjoy the sensation of forgetting who Johnny Russell was and then being reminded again that he's a very good MLS player during our game.
Is he still?
Yeah.
He was probably their biggest threat on the day. So, because, Kansas City is just kind of depleted, too. 2 of their other DPs are out for the year, Polito and Kinda.
Oh, fuck, he's there.
Yeah, Polito's still there, but he's not playing.
Kyrie Shelton is still there?
Yeah, but he's had to be their main striker this year, and they're last in the West or hovering around there.
What a throwback.
Yeah, for real.
Maybe they do lose.
It was the first time it was the first time we've been in Kansas City since the Kaku fan violation game. Yeah. So, it's been a little bit, but, just kind of a nice little 3 points to get on the road. But, also just, kind of a forgettable game. Some great Patrick Lamala time wasting at the end.
Forgot about that.
I was gonna say,
he was playing left back basically at the end.
He was playing left back, and he was so good at knowing not to come off the field.
Yeah.
John Tolkien learned that lesson last year, and I think Klamala really took it to heart this year.
Yeah. I was gonna say, it evens out. It doesn't even out, but it makes me feel slightly better about some of the dropped easy points at home earlier this year, that we get sort of one of these weird 1-0 wins away, even though Kansas City's kind of bad. But mostly I think it's funny when opposing fans in stadiums get really huffy like this, when it's the kind of fan in stadium where they have all the signs being like, "Welcome to Blue Hell."
Yeah.
Boy, you never been to Kansas City before? We have barbecue sauce here. gonna make you sweat. Watch out.
The only hot city in America.
Fucking police. Look at this. There's a man who is pretending to be hurt. I'm being assaulted. What the fuck? So Cincinnati.
Switching focus.
I'm gathering that all of you should be very sorry because presumably we burned Cincinnati to the ground on. When do we play them? Sunday, Saturday?
Yeah, we violated the long-standing Anglo-American kind of sense of law and order. Just completely thrown out the window. Just complete kind of barbarism, really.
Yeah.
But it came up Red Bull, I suppose.
All right.
So, yeah, I don't know where you really. I mean, this was another kind of just sort of forgettable midsummer slog of a game. We only score through a Lewis Morgan penalty, but he gets to add to his pretty kind of eye-catching tally it's getting to be this year, scoring all different types of goals. And another one where it's Cincinnati's maybe not the best team, and you maybe hope you want. I mean, I wrote this up for OAM. You maybe want the attack to have a little bit more danger, especially when we had a man advantage later in the game because Cincinnati kind of blew their gasket and got some reds. You would hope to see some more cohesive attacking. But all in all, at the end of the game, again, a nice little point to split in a tough road setting.
Man, why do teams get so mad when they play us? It's just like it's.
I mean, we're not City. We're chill. We're cool.
Yeah, we don't crowd the ref or anything.
Yeah.
We foul a lot, but that's been the case for fucking 7 years or whatever.
How many goals does Morgan have now?
9.
Yeah.
Oh,
Although,
so
I don't
Pennis Porgan.
Yeah, exactly. Puis. Penuous. Maybe he's starting to feel that jet lag a little bit over here. This was a real Mark Twain novel of a summary. We would go down to Atlanta, go to Kansas City, go to Cincinnati, just burn it. We got all of Cincinnati's fans to paint the world's largest white picket fence, and they're freaking mad about it now. They're going to let us know what a dirty little trick that was. But lo and behold, it seems like we've been attending our own funeral this whole time, and we're not actually dead. The Red Bull's still hanging around these parts. But yeah, is there a reason, or is there any particular insight in the Cincinnati game for why or particular spots on the field where we're not really flowing or manufacturing goals, or is it kind of just what we've been talking about the season so far in general?
It was a lot of the kind of recurring themes from this season and last season, really, where I mean, it's cliche that I'm kind of starting to go to. I actually lifted it from, and I've probably mentioned this on the podcast here before, but it's actually a quote that I paraphrased from a Philly Union player last year. Obviously, some people like to let us know more than others. They play a lot like Red Bull. We know this. And one of their players said last year, when they were kind of, in a little bit of the same sort of funk that we were, not really being able to generate much danger in attack, one of their players was quoted somewhere saying, "It feels like with the way we play, we need 1,000 different things to go perfectly in order to score a goal." And I think that's setting in a lot with RBNY right now. And, I sort of commented on this on OAM. I maybe got a little kind of roasty when I kind of described it as the aristocrats, but that Struber sort of went on a kind of ramble when he was asked to describe the struggles in attack, where it just sort of sounded like he says, we need to have, this line perpendicular to this in zone 14, and this player needs to be level here, and this run needs to be synchronized with this when this second ball drops at this angle here. And it all became kind of a thing where it's like, sometimes you just kind of need to just put it in the net. Sometimes you just need to kind of make a good ball and make a good run, and you score.
Do you think
all this kind of connection? And I've talked about it with my kind of positive take on Struber, where yes, it is a holistic game, and I do appreciate that, especially with the tactics we run, that you create a lot of attacks through the way you defend. But that being said, I think we're trying to reinvent the wheel a little bit here, and maybe putting a little bit too much in guys' heads about how we're supposed to score. Or it's just a matter of, we're just not running enough. We're not getting enough numbers forward in these summer months, which, even if that is an issue, you do need to have kind of a, solution for that as well. And it just seems like the attacking side is a little bit in the weeds right now, and it's not clear how we get out of it. Outside of just bringing new personnel in, but that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah, and I was not I wonder if this is also a little bit of him being like a little coach speaky, and trying to obfuscate a little so that the accountability doesn't really lie on where he is, because it does, when we have scored, right, it does take either individual effort or kind of a set piece where we have all the things that we can line up in order to kind of work these days. But at the same time, we were talking about this before. Who's responsible for the set pieces? It's not Struber, who is responsible for hitting a volley from 40 yards out? It's Luquinhas, and I wonder how much of that is just I'm just saying a lot of words, so I don't necessarily have to take accountability for this.
Yeah,
I do miss just a nice simple BWP tap in, and you just always knew you'd get at least one or two at RBA.
We don't really play. I mean, we don't play with advanced wingers in this setup. I mean, Struber kind of just leaves Klimala or Barlow or whoever to kind of flare out and lead the line across the entire front, and it just doesn't generate those kind of opportunities the way BWP would put them in.
Yeah, and he's the head runner, so it's not like people are going to be in the box for him.
Right.
But he's also our number 9, so he's the one that's supposed to be in the box for the delivery.
It does make me eat my words a little bit previously on this podcast, around when Struber got hired. But even before that, when we were just hypothetically talking potential hires, I just said, I like, the idea of managers who just didn't really have very good careers or careers at all, like Mourinho, Wenger, that sort of thing. And Struber kind of fits that. He had a very middling lower league career. So let's get a weird,
had to learn the game the hard way.
Right. Yeah. But now, I'm like, man, maybe I do wish we went more the Ancelotti or Clough route of just having a guy who banged in goals as manager as well, because it's it does feel like when he's giving these explanations of all of the columns and zones and lines needing to be orthogonal to each other and all his load management thing, it's does feel like it's sort of forgetting just the experience of being on the field and feeling in a groove.
Right.
And how taking off your striker regardless of who it is after 48 minutes, 52 minutes, giving him only 27 minutes to make that is going to inherently inhibit that sort of thing, and that not every game is going to be pretty, as we saw to our benefit in Kansas City and against Atlanta this week, the last 2 weeks. So yeah, making me eat my words a little bit on that, but it's probably just specific to Struber rather than a general observation. With that said, I think this is a good point to pause this conversation because we're talking about sort of general state of the club, things getting into that territory. And in our second segment coming up, we talk with Eric Friedlander of Once a Metro about something we have not talked about in depth or really at all so far this season on View from 202, which is Red Bull 2, the academy, youth players, what's going on with them, where they're at. Certain guys like Jake LaCava, Omar Sow, Gary Lewis, who was the Red Bulls 2 manager at the beginning of the season and has now been relieved of that duty in the last few weeks. We discuss that move in the context of the changing visions and perhaps priorities in the Red Bull 2 program. And we also mention the name Schneider Joachim Schneider, who was announced as the new head of sport. In theory, I haven't heard him speak. I assume he's busy tasting ketchups in a plant in Germany.
My take is that Jochen Schneider is actually like a German in-joke, like Bielefeld.
Right. He's just like the local like.
It was like, oh, I've got a Jochen Schneider at home. Yeah, he's really doing a lot of work.
He's like a dust mite that, you know how like Schalke has like is it Schalke that has like the salt mine like entrance to their stadium? He's just like a little dust mite who lives in the salt mine. He's like, oh, children, you make sure to clean the top quarter of your socks, or else the Jochen Schneider will come and steal your socks away and make them dirty with the slight film of salt.
But anyway, that's exactly what we'll be talking with Eric about next.
It's Alex!
Hey Eric, this is Brit. Thanks for joining us tonight. Do you want to take a second and introduce yourself and describe your work briefly?
I'm Eric. Thank you for having me. It's another Red Bull podcast checked off the list.
There's a long way to go still, but
yeah, I explained it to Ben that I view Red Bull podcasts as Pokemon, and I just have to get on them all. So,
well, you got your in with the Super League now, so you know.
Super League of podcasts, yeah.
I've been on Metro Fan TV twice, I think. It's the only one I've been a repeat guest. They enjoyed my first 2 hours, so they brought me back for another 2 hours.
You should start invoicing them soon. But yeah,
cover the youth game in the Red Bull Veer, and been doing that for probably like 4 or 5 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. But it's been also a lot of fun to see a lot of young players kind of rise up to the first team or go on to Europe. But yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is a good club to be covering stuff from that angle, and this has been kind of a good year to be covering stuff from that angle, because there actually has been a lot of movement on that front, a lot of players coming up from the bottom after it kind of trailed off a little bit for a few years. And I figured just to start off, just kind of maybe working backwards, kind of talk about some of the guys who aren't necessarily in the Red Bull orbit right now, but are playing on loan. Actually, Omar Sow I don't think Omar Sow got into his Europa League game today, did he? I think he was only on the bench. Were you following that at all, Eric?
I am not following his loan that much, just because I would not know where to start to like find a game for Lucaris or whatever.
I don't know how to pronounce the name either, but yeah.
The team does do a good job updating on just like what he's doing.
Right.
Which is sorry about that. Which is nice that they kind of are giving us those updates on both him and LaCava. But I mean, it's kind of cool. I think this is exactly what he needed. Coming from like, he was late to the academy. He only played U19 and kind of burst onto the scene there. And then it was kind of like in Red Bull 2, but like Red Bull 2 is kind of a throw you, like, get your feet wet type of club team now. It's not a
like finishing school.
Your first, like, you're going to go there and then it's right to the first team. Only kind of the top tier prospect will be able to do that, I think. So like for someone like who's a very just a raw person, like he's young, he's just learning how to be a pro, to get sent to Iceland and kind of be isolated from distractions at home, like hometown kind of pressures, is probably really good for him, and get that experience in Europe abroad, like new culture, and that challenge of having to adapt is almost as valuable as what he'll get playing soccer kind of week in, week out in a competitive environment.
That's true. It's a real pro club environment to be in compared to like, being in the development team, right?
Yeah, like
even especially now.
Right, like even if you're playing like Andorran teams like he was today, playing in Europa League qualifiers, like pretty high stakes is not nothing. Like having the chance to get those kind of minutes, those sort of situations, and even like Lakava. I mean, USL has come a long way in the last few years, as we can see with Red Bulls 2 not really being able to keep up results wise a little bit, and going to one of the bigger clubs like Tampa Bay, you'd think is a good test for him too.
Yeah, exactly. I think for Lakava, like he's been on trials in Europe. He's kind of had that experience of living abroad, being in Europe. For him, it's like, can you be a top player on one of the best teams in a tier below? And then what will you gain from that? So like with Rebel 2, he tried to do everything because he had to do everything, and you see it a little bit with Jeremy Raffanello, who's kind of like a poor man's version of Lakava. Like he tries to solve all the problems, all the issues on the field, and you just can't do that as a player. You have to play the team game, and I think Lakava is learning that at Tampa, of like how to fit a specific role and fit right into a system, and then have competition because you're in a competitive professional setup versus you're going to play every game because you're just that much more talented than anyone who could come into your orbit. So I think for him, it's being in that kind of competitive setup, and the way he's playing and the kind of composure he's showing on the ball, which was a big issue for him at Red Bull 2, was that he just was like not calm on the ball and would get it and lose it and turn the ball over a lot. I think he's showing that he could be someone next year that's fighting for one of the striker positions or fighting for minutes with the first team, because I don't think he's that far off like a Cameron Harper is right now in terms of just like where their levels are at.
Yeah, I'm almost thinking like, because he's kind of like he's a forward more or less, but kind of like a hybrid, almost like a 10 sometimes. Like it kind of reminds me a little bit of maybe the niche that Omir Fernandez fills in the team right now, that maybe he could be something of an heir apparent to, whether or not you agree.
That's a really good comp for him, because he's kind of like a more physical Omir. Like he can do a little more of the striker stuff and a little less of the creative, but he still has that kind of, I'm going to get on the ball and I'm going to run at you with pace and I'm going to be a little tricky and I'm going to try to kind of be physical and not as much. I think he's learning a little bit more at Tampa, like how to run in behind and kind of run the channels and be more of a true 9. So it's kind of rounding out his game that he could definitely be a good, like part of me thought if they weren't going to make any other moves, like just bringing him back on loan would be an interesting option. Like if you say next year Barlow's gone, which he could be, and you never know, maybe St. Louis takes him, Bradley Carnell takes him back to home, but like he would be ideal like in that Barlow role of like energy off the bench, aggressive runner with probably a little more quality.
And this is Lakava?
Yeah.
So like frenetic energy, chaos, and embodied. We don't really talk
tattooed on his neck. So
yeah, fair enough. We obviously don't talk about the second team that much, but why? To our listeners, why couldn't he do that at RB2? What's in his way from doing that there?
I think the issue currently with Red Bull 2 is it's just, there's not a totally clear idea of what it's supposed to be. And I think there's, within the organization currently, multiple thoughts on what it should be. And I think that's partially causing some of the issues. I think there's some who think it should be strictly getting minutes for young kids, and the results, yeah, they're not going to say they don't matter, but they're not super concerned as long as they're getting certain development metrics on certain players. And I think there's others who are now taking a little more of an interest in the squad, who would like it to be a little more competitive of a team and be, if it's not a playoff, like a mid-table level team. And there's just so much disconnect in terms of the roster and the talent. Like, talent is just not there right now, and it wasn't there last year, and last year was levels above where this team is currently talent-wise. It's like there's no one on this current roster who could hold up to the level of Rold Mitchell, let alone LaCava or Omar Sow. Like, there's no one on, like, defensively who's anywhere near, like, Castillo's good, but, like, no one else is in his realm of, like, ability. And, like, the young guys are young. Like, Curtis Ofori shows promise, Sam Williams shows promise, but like Sam
16.
Williams is going to be a college player. He's not going to get a pro contract, most likely.
Yeah.
So it's like, if those are your best players, that's an issue. Because then it's like you're John Murphy, brought in as a center mid, wasn't playing in USL League One. Now he's a USL Championship player. Like, Michael Knapp, it's not that good. Like, there's just a lack of talent, and the first team guys aren't, like, training. It's not like Zach Ryan and Jesus Castellanos and Wiki Carmona, who have been getting some minutes of late, are in training much with Rebel 2. They still just train with the first team and then pop down. So there's not a lot of continuity and built-up cohesion. And then you take a Steven Serwata out of there, and it's just talent level is just very minimal once you get off the 1-2 key players.
Yeah, I was thinking that compared to sort of the heyday of 2016, if you will, for RB2, it seems like a lot of the players at that sort of level that were on RB2 in 2016, nowadays they're just playing with the first team, kind of like all these guys that we just mentioned. Carmona sitting with the first team when he's not hurt. And I think even the way that you described Raffanello, the struggles that Raffanello was having, kind of trying to do everything at once and relying on talent, just because being a talented young player rising through the ranks, that actually made me think a lot of Caden Clark's problems maybe a little bit with our squad right now, and how he seemed to enjoy his most productive parts with the first team when we were having the weird 2020 season when everyone was kind of just running around and he could just rely on talent. But it seems like it's been much more difficult to find a place for him either within the club or on loan or at Leipzig, if that's his club, to actually slot in and learn a position.
Go into a system.
Yeah.
No, exactly. It's very tough at the moment because it doesn't seem, at Rebel 2 at least, there's a defined system. It's very much like we're just going to throw the ball out there and have a scrimmage, essentially. Like, the roster is like they play pickup and they just were like, well, we need a center back. Let's you, Lamine Conte, Cragwell, like, you should do, like.
Yeah,
and
like,
if you look at them, like, they don't fit an archetype of what's been successful in terms of mining talent. Like, even if you just look at, like, where has Red Bull 2 been successful? It's like they have produced quite a bit of center backs. Aaron Long came through there, Sean Nealis. What was their archetype? It's kind of these taller, athletic, big center backs.
And Conte and Cragwell are kind of shorter, right?
Like, yeah, they're barely scratching, like, 6 foot, and they're slow.
Unacceptable.
Like,
we have to be. We need to be a total club of tall energy, in my opinion. You know, we can't have these short kings going around.
Well,
if you're going to go short, it's fine. You can but be athletic like Tom Edwards and Dylan Nealis.
Yeah.
But here they're short and unathletic relative to the demands of the system. So then you go and stick them to play a high line with 2 fullbacks who want to charge forward. And it's like, why do they lose 6-0? Well,
So this goes to the
simple.
obvious question. Like, is this why our boy Ndom's back?
I would think so. I think what was really telling in that is who was quoted. And that Dennis Hamlet was quoted versus Sean McCafferty. And I think I think there's
Sean
some
McCafferty
definitely
being the
power
academy director for the folks
dynamics
at home.
at hand, and Hamlet was not pleased with what was going on, and is maybe before Yoke and Schneider is fully onboarded, is like putting his foot down and gaining some power.
Yeah. So taking a step
I
back.
think
Oh, sorry.
Kevin Thelwell was definitely had like the academy crew, Sean and a lot of the coaches were definitely kind of Kevin Thelwell's guys, and Dennis Hamlet was kind of just there. And now there's a new like sheriff in town, and Dennis Hamlet has an opportunity to kind of show his value once again and kind of say, okay, I'm going to run Red Bull 2 again, and here's an old friend who fits kind of what we need.
Yeah, it's
And
kind of a
maybe he
statement
can
like
sell
that.
Dennis Hamlet, bread and butter right there.
Yeah, and I think this
He's
conversation
very good at just finding a way to stick around.
Yeah, which is a skill, I suppose. But so I think this is also a good opportunity to take a step back, because one thing we haven't discussed on the show yet this year really is, well, one, the hiring of Gary Lewis in the first place at RB2, and now he's been fired, and we haven't remarked on it yet. And then we also haven't talked about Schneider, I don't think, either. So I think in light of what we were talking about earlier about RB2 being sort of in an in-between place and the organization having different visions within it about what RB2 is, how does this align with Gary Lewis? Do you think Gary Lewis had one particular idea or was brought in with one particular idea and that has shifted?
I think he was definitely brought in by different people and who are currently trying to maybe right the ship a bit. I definitely think he was a Sean and Kevin Thelwell hire. Obviously, he has a background in Liverpool, in England. He has a background in coaches education, which is something Kevin Thelwell has a big background in. I definitely think he was a hire of like that crew, and maybe now that Thelwell's gone and the results aren't good, it was kind of like Hamlet stepping in and saying, hey, this isn't working. I don't like what I'm seeing. And I've heard rumors that there was like quite a bit of frustration on the game that after Lewis got fired, that game, like there was a lot of shouting coming from that locker room. So those are just rumors, but I wouldn't be surprised if like Hamlet was like, no, this isn't working anymore and we can't be like this bad.
Right.
But I just think it's a talent issue as much as like, I don't think he was a great coach, but I don't think it was like, there's only so much you can do when you're playing like borderline USL League One talent in the championship. It's just not going to work.
Well, I was going to say, ask this too, like obviously this team, I guess, RB2 has won the USL Cup, but do you think the league that it's in right now has changed drastically? And obviously looking forward to the future, are we preparing for this reserve league in a different kind of way? Is this what team that's going to kind of fit that more than like being in USL Championship?
Yeah, I definitely think like, I don't think this team is winning MLS Next Pro as currently constructed. I really am low on a lot of the talent on it, but I do think it's a competitive outfit in MLS Next Pro from some of the MLS Next Pro I've seen. Like, I've been to some Earthquakes 2 game. Like, it's not the highest level, and it's probably closer to...
Oh, is that your local club now?
Yeah, I'm gonna get free tickets if I can get free. I saw John Wallneck there, so it's really just me trying to stalk John Wallneck and talk to him, see if he remembers me. He's probably like, he'll see me and be like, "Shit, I thought I got away." Yeah. Said he was moving west. Yeah. Literally, the last time I saw him was in Pittsburgh before I started driving out to Colorado.
Just keep haunting him. So, he can't look behind his shoulder.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I thought he was in Colorado." Damn it. But no, it's like the level's not amazing there, but it's a solid. It's probably good if you're going to be playing 15-year-olds and a 07. Like, you can get away with that at that level, and not every game, but it's solid. But like USL Championship is no longer like college kids who are like trying to make it. It's like 28-year-old. Yeah, guys who have made their career playing at this like lower level, like guys like Romario Williams and Dane Kelly and Keanu Ford. Like, they're good soccer players who are probably just like, they could go play on an MLS minimum reserve contract, but they probably make just a little bit more playing in USL versus fighting it out on the like scraps of an MLS roster. Like, they're solid players, and you just can't throw like a poorly constructed roster of kids in against that. And when we won USL, it was still Division 3. It was a much smaller league, and NASL was still the dominant league in terms of like what was the next level. But once NASL collapsed,
they paid like adult players
$500,000,
more,
and
then
and
all those players moved down to USL.
Like Guendouzi and Restrepo and like guys who have become like USL mainstays now, but they were top NASL players, and that all like that combination of like NASL dying and USL rapidly expanding led to the level of USL being much higher than it was when like Red Bull 2 first started, and like that final was a USL 2, like a MLS 2 team versus another MLS 2 team. So it was like they were good for a while, but they were also playing 25-year-old Ryan Mara, 24-year-old Aaron Long,
right?
Like 22, 23-year-old Dan Metzger, like
16-year-old Tyler Adams.
Like, like Tyler Adams, generational talent.
Yeah.
But still, like Derek Etienne, like solid MLS player.
And it was also like a thing where like
it was all very solid USL players and a few exceptional talents on that winning team.
And it was also kind of a thing,
special.
Like you were saying, where it was an MLS 2 team versus an MLS 2 team. Like back in those days, it was sort of a thing where the rest of the league was so kind of slapped together that having a team of reserves and academy guys who like knew each other and actually had an identity was enough to be better than even a team of maybe more talent on paper back in those days. But that's changed too.
Yeah.
You mentioning
like
I was
3
say,
years.
Yeah, you mentioning NSL going out has reminded me that this is another opportunity for me to insert a Valorant analogy here.
Oh boy.
Well, they recently they added a new rank in the competitive queue. So I actually got boosted up because the distribution of all the talent switched. So it's basically the same as that, I think, as my analogy.
Oh, that's it. You just said it.
Right.
I thought this was a setting. Okay.
No, no, but also, like, you did mention this, like, this team is going to be constructed probably full of a bunch of 15, 16-year-old kids for the foreseeable future, right? In MLS, Next Pro or whatever iteration this team does take, this was a bit of a discourse insofar as how much do results matter for that kind of team, or like, and we were talking about like what are we looking at RB2 for? Now that this kind of new new shape of RB2 is happening, what's kind of like on your scope of what is to come, and like how you view the function of this team and the necessity of results in that?
I think it has to still be competitive. I think my whole thing is like, if you have a competitive roster where minutes aren't just being handed out, that's almost better than like being competitive on the field, because then there's some like fight to get into the team. Right now it doesn't even seem like you have to fight to get into the team. You just have to be the healthy body, and there's just like not that many bodies to, like, you can barely field a full team. So like, how much do you have to really work hard to improve to get in? How much jeopardy are you in? Which goes back to why you want to loan out a Lacava So, because what is the jeopardy? What's at risk of if you have a bad week of training? It's like you're still going to play. So like, it's good to get minutes, but I think you still need to have some competition within the squad, and that should breed a better product on the field. Just because even if you're not winning MLS Next Pro, you want to be winning games. You don't want to be getting blown out, because you don't learn anything that way either if you're just like so unorganized and so like messed up in terms of like your structure, just basic structure of how you play, that you get blown out every game. I think you need to find that balance of like, yeah, it's good to get the kids in and give them opportunity and challenge them at higher levels, but you also need to give them the support so that when they get up there, they're successful, so that they keep kind of rising instead of like it being a setback. So you have to find the balance of like, yeah, you want you don't want to overload your roster so that you don't have the chance to give these kids minutes, but you need to be somewhat competitive and somewhat of a good product and have enough talent so that they're not just being given minutes and it's not just like oh, we're going to throw a ball out there and play some soccer once a week, and whatever it is it needs to be, you need to find a balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, because also thinking back to that era of when RB2 had the most sort of recognizable names on it, in hindsight, names that ended up contributing to the first team either a little bit or substantially. I think one feature of that as well is that at the time, the first team had a very set starting 11 and like even match day 18, and we really didn't switch it up that much in 2015, 2016, 2017 we sort of did, but there was a real feeling that there was like a wall between the first team and the second team. And I think the result was that there felt like there was an environment where all of the guys on RB2 were sort of fighting and pushing each other to earn that nod, to get through that wall and earn some time, and there's some stakes there. Whereas right now, it sounds like the stakes are just very loosey-goosey, and guys are going up and down because, I mean, the first team also has a shortage of bodies. We've been doing these short-term emergency loans the last month, so that makes a lot of sense to me, and made me realize something about the old RB2 teams that I don't think I had thought about before. But
yeah, no, that's definitely spot on. I think also they just need the kind of, the benefit of having a competitive squad is that you can also better analyze like what do these stats mean? Like, he's putting up big numbers, what does it mean? Kind of like, how are they fitting within the squad? Like, yeah, he's playing, but like, what is he getting out of it? Are these minutes productive to his development and being able to slot into the first team? And it's kind of figuring that out. And like, even someone like Steven Serwato, like, he kind of came back from international break, like 3 weeks with Uganda, and then was pretty much a first team player from there on out. He didn't even play with RB2. So it's kind of like, can you even judge if like how much of his success with the first team so far is like, because he's a talented player and he was good in training? Like, it's hard to look at a Red Bull 2 game and totally look at a player and say like, is he good, or like, does the team just suck and he's trying to do too much? Like, Raffaello,
there's no baseline to work off of.
Yeah, like from what I'm told, the first team really likes Raffaello, and there's some, I think Philly probably has his homegrown rights, which is why he can't really get called up until they figure that out. But it's like, but is he good, or is like he's bad and he's trying too much, and because he tries too much, you think he's bad because he's taking stupid shots, and he wouldn't do that with the first team? Because it's always hard to assess. Like, Tom Barlow was the better striker at Red Bull 2. And I don't think anyone will really debate that Brian White's the better soccer player.
Right.
Like,
I was going to say,
put up better numbers.
That analogy sounds very familiar, minus the stupid shots thing for the first team a little bit, but, you know.
How so?
Just like, you know, a struggling player who might be talented, but we might not see their talent because they're doing too much, because there's a lot of weight on their shoulders to do stuff because, you know.
Oh, do you mean Klimala?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
I think during the Armas years, Royer kind of carried some of that, where he would be like, why aren't you passing? And it seemed like he always was trying to do too much. And even Cáceres early on, and some people will probably say I have some Cáceres agenda, but like, even early on when he played at a 10, it was like, just make the simple ball. Like, why are you trying to do so much? And like, when he's played as a 6 recently, it's been a lot more reserved and kind of playing the right ball versus trying to play the like
perfect
mega
ball.
Hero ball and the 30-yard shot every single time. It's more like, okay, I can live with you doing that here and there, not every single play.
Well, I think that's kind of a lot of the turf we wanted to cover and more. We really appreciate you coming on, Eric. Is there anything you want to plug or anything like that besides letting John Wolenek know again that your footsteps will always be behind him?
I think he's following me, but nothing to plug. Just keep reading Once a Metro, and
that's right.
Reading my stuff there. Follow me on Twitter, efried97, and other ones. Other than that, thank you for having me. Always happy to talk about the academy and the happenings and going on in kind of the youth scene in the Red Bull New York sphere.
Awesome, man. We appreciate it too.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Have a good night, guys.
All right, later, man.
It's Alex!
Welcome back to this final segment of episode 216 of View from 202. Thank you again to Eric for joining us to talk RB2. You can, of course, always read Eric on Once a Metro and on Twitter.
Also, if you want to guest on this podcast, send a DM to Ben Mindstand. He'll handle the booking.
Right.
Yeah.
Our attorney.
Yeah, obviously. So I think building on some of the themes we discussed with Eric in that segment of sort of just shifting visions, shifting personnel, shifting situations at Red Bull New York, I think we can also pick up from the beginning of our show where we're talking about sort of this continual funk or inability to just produce week in, week out in the club in this final segment here as we look forward to another derby on the weekend. Our first league derby with New York City FC. View from 202 listeners of this season may remember that, to start the season, we had a big reaction to a couple press conferences given by Struber about transfers, about sort of dissatisfaction with the players in the squad and being able to execute a vision. Since then, week in, week out, or every other week, it feels like we talk about this feeling of, like Cork said in the first segment, it feels like we have to do 1,000 things right to score a goal. My understanding is that this week we got another series of quotes, another discussion about sort of the squad not being up to the level it needs personnel-wise to be able to score as much as the manager, as much as we'd like to do. What's going on here? Are there more changes on the horizon when it comes to transfers? Is this squad not actually in a complete or coherent state?
It's hard to tell. I mean, kind of like we've been, kind of mentioning a couple times earlier parts of the show, there is supposedly a new head of sport installed, and one with, again, an extensive amount of European ties, ready to sort of get some signings in place. And, it's still a little bit early in the window. It's, the window's a little under a month long. It started last week. But there are some clubs who have already started to do some business and had some stuff lined up, and we have not. And normally that's not something that this pod would be too upset about. We're not, transfer muppets, as we like to say sometimes. We don't think that, just buying new toys is the solution to your problems all the time. But a person who has said that this year is Gerhard Struber. And he's put a little bit of pressure on the season, both in his preseason comments that, he didn't think the winter transfer window that brought in, Lewis Morgan and Luquinhas and didn't end up working out, but a Premier League striker and Ashley Fletcher, that supposedly wasn't a good enough haul and wasn't a good enough underpinning of the squad. And obviously Kevin Thelwell ended up taking the Everton job, and we've had Dennis Hamlet as somewhat of the interim again, and now we have Jochen Schneider, supposedly a guy more in line with what Struber wants recruitment-wise. And Struber has said multiple times this year that this summer window will be very pivotal, that we need one or two more key players to kind of bolster the team going into the home stretch of what's been a good season so far, where we're in line to compete for some trophies. And, you would think with some of that context that things would be a little further along than it seems like they are in the transfer window so far. We have gotten out some kind of fringe that was kind of holding on the cap. We've had Jason Pendant moved on to Rouen in France. He's going back home. We've seen David Jensen's contract just be terminated, and he's going to move on to new frontiers somewhere. And then there's also Ashley Fletcher, who we just mentioned, and who we mentioned in the last 202 episode, that was being sent back to Watford after his loan expired here. So a little bit of space to work with, but it doesn't seem like there was another shoe to drop with those.
Is Caden Clark going?
Well, there's a little bit, going up in the air on that. There's been, there was one of those fucking USMNT freak accounts that put out a little thing over the weekend that Clark is getting ready to leave this summer. I've done a little bit of reporting on OAM over the last couple months that there are some motions to make that happen. It seems like nothing has necessarily changed on that front from my end and what I know about the situation. So maybe we do see Caden Clark move on as well. But I think it's more interesting, especially because a guy like Caden Clark hasn't, and not to mention Pendant and Jensen haven't really played a part in the team too much this year. That I think it's more interesting to see what gets brought in, what improvements, what areas of the team we see get fortified. I think there's going to be a lot of tea leaves to read, and a lot of kind of stakes laid out for what the rest of the season is going to look like, based on what we do in the next couple of weeks transfer wise. There's been the Dylan Venta rumor out of Holland, plays at Roda in the Dutch second division, where, even though it's a second division team, he is a Dutch youth international, and he did lead the second division in scoring last year. Sounds like maybe that's a little bit off the radar now, and we might have swung and missed on that, but still remains to be seen. There isn't a whole lot of smoke out there. Otherwise, we cracked a joke earlier in the show about the Israeli right back, Elias, what's his last name? I don't know. Elias something. I don't know. Yeah. Not going to play for Red Bull New York. That's for sure. Doesn't seem that way, at least. But
we're gonna get a tweet tomorrow announcing that he signed, and I'm gonna have to edit this out of our episode.
Exactly. Other than those, there's not a lot of smoke out there, which, like I sort of laid out starting this segment, is a little strange given
we're
the
pretty
context
far
of the
into
last
the
few months.
window.
It's been like a week, and it's not like other teams haven't been able to get stuff lined up. So a little bit of we're watching you, Jochen, Dennis,
it would
Gerhard,
be so
whoever.
annoying if it was like, we got to give Jochen a little bit of a leash because it's his first window. But,
Right.
it's also
that's not what we were told is going to happen.
Yeah, and also,
summer.
I think this is true. Like, let's keep the record straight on stuff here. Like, let's look at what's being asked for and what's being delivered in this window and see if it happens. Jochen Schneider obviously was the guy at the helm of the fall of Schalke.
Right. Little bit of a concern there, but even though Schalke went down under his watch, he got a shitload of transfers done. Like, he knows how
like
to do
Mark
that.
Schakowsky.
Well, yeah. who knows if they were really ones worth setting up, but he knows how to get a deal done. So you would like to see something happen. We'll see.
Yeah.
Remember when Gerhard Struber was like, last season in the summer, he was like, well, geez, it'd be nice to have a defensive midfielder around. Fucking ask my boss about that.
Right.
And then this year we've got a really good defensive midfield pairing, 3 of which have been on the club the last year and a half, and were at the club last summer as well. We didn't sign a single defensive midfielder, and our defensive midfielder is great now.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Maybe, yeah.
Although he did not.
Maybe crying wolf over some of these positions.
He was also not playing a lot last season, too. So, you know.
Yeah.
Frankie.
Yeah.
And, Drew, apparently back in the doghouse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seems that way.
For who knows what reason.
Is Klimala in the doghouse at this rate?
I mean, he doesn't seem to be allowed to play more than 55 minutes a game.
Are people starting to read on the walls for Klimala? Is like that?
I mean, it's hard to tell. It's become kind of inscrutable.
So who would be this mystery perfect striker who is going to play in MLS and doesn't cost $80 million or whatever?
Who's going to gather the ball in the corners, these long balls, and then dribble them past 3 guys into the goal, I guess.
Is that even what he wants, Struber?
He doesn't seem, there haven't been, like we mentioned earlier, there haven't been those BWP cutbacks at all, really, outside of the couple kind of little flashes that Harper's had.
Yeah.
And we don't really play.
We don't really put crosses in.
We don't really play a setup and an attacking approach that encourages us to feed balls into a 9. We want the 9 to kind of play inside out, and it seems like Struber's, maybe he's just figures he's getting cute and doing a platoon where he can just do Klimala 1/2, Barlow 1/2, and just have them be constantly fresh. But kind of like you were saying earlier, Brit, that really works against a player's confidence. And if you value Klimala and you trust him to eventually kind of turn the corner and start putting some goals in, you would want to give him more than 5-10 minutes in the second half to sort of work that out. And it's also a thing too where Struber's mentioned himself where he's mentioned it himself but not done anything about it, which is a little odd. But he cited it was American Soccer Analysis, the website, who did an interesting little piece a couple months ago about a quote that Jim Curtin made where, like he said, I have a phobia about changing my team too much week to week. And they did a little bit of a study, and it turns out, yes, like there is kind of a little bit of a Mendoza line where if you switch like 4 or 5 guys out of a lineup week to week, your results are going to drop. And Struber actually cited that study. It might have even been a question I asked him in a press conference about, kind of changing the lineup a lot week to week. And he said, oh, yeah, we know there's a risk of doing that, but we're still doing it anyway. And it's just, it's become and it adds to why I thought it was a really good point you made, Brit, earlier in the season, where not only does it just, is the team just not cohesive and guys aren't kind of playing unconsciously and linking with each other and have chemistry and all that, but also it kind of corrodes a bit of the accountability factor that guys can't necessarily call each other out or feel accountable for their standards when they can, very kind of fairly say, I'm playing a new role every week. Mm-hmm. I'm not really in a groove with this in the way that you kind of expect me to be. And when your team is just kind of changing like that week to week, game to game, half to half, it's really hard to get. And, Eric was kind of talking about that in the previous segment about, Red Bulls 2, where it's just really hard to get sort of a control and really know, what something is working in relation to other things working, because it's just not the same. It's not the same context and the same situation every game. So it's just really hard to tell, where to judge things. So, and that's just, kind of part of, it's certainly not yet a zone sort of malaise, but it's definitely a little bit of traces of the issues that are inherent with that sort of state.
Yeah, but it's also like not the zone, because
No.
I think a lot of people are kind of a little bit more. It's less like gaslighty almost. I feel like in a way, just because I think people can kind of smell a little bit better through maybe some bullshit going on if there is any. But, you know, I have to say, as you were talking, I realized one thing, and I have to retract what I was saying about Klimala earlier, and that I now know that his he does have a future at this club, and he's going to play left back, and we've been asking for that left back.
Oh, yeah. He's going to pull the Ashley Cole at 25 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
This is also apropos time to mention the thing about accountability so much, because this week, in the wake of Tyler Adams' move to Leeds, I guess somebody reran or talked about the story where I guess Tyler got into a fight in the locker room in his first season as like a first team player here with a player that I think somebody said it was Felipe, because I think Sal Zizzo actually just talked about this on his podcast previously.
Yeah.
So basically,
kind of semi-confirmed. Yeah.
Yeah, stood up and was
apparently just beat Felipe's ass.
Yeah, or like was calling people out. Felipe is a more established player in the team. He's only 25, but he'd been playing as a pro for like 9 years or something. Was like, hey, shut up. And then Tyler put him on his ass. But yeah, that's the kind of thing that's not quite as possible with what we're talking about, with everything being in flux, everyone being in the doghouse for inscrutable reasons. So I would love to have a squad and bring it back to transfers. Who knows who's going to come in, but it would really annoy me if we sort of pass and maybe even move on guys like Drew or Klimala from the squad for these sort of, when we never really had like a full vision or squad of who's playing where every week, or giving guys consistent time, and moving them on from the club entirely would be annoying. Especially if Struber ends up getting a job in another year or two, which we have always suspected him to be in line for, even before we've had these more specific gripes. Even when we signed him back in 2020, I think a lot of us are saying, okay, yeah, he's probably aspiring to go to something bigger in 2 to 3, 4 years. So that's still true even before we got a little bit grumpy. If we move on a guy with a lot of talent like Drew, in my opinion, but while we're constantly changing stuff, that would be very annoying. Wouldn't be a fan. I like to make fun of Atlanta as much as everyone else, but lo and behold, I think we're doing a weirder Red Bull version of their sort of spending habit a little bit, where we just buy guys and then don't seem to be able to commit to a sort of consistent plan or personnel chart for the year, and that before we end up deciding to move them on. So we'll see. We'll see, I guess, is a long-winded way of getting to that point. To close this out, I think we've got City this weekend, first league derby of the year.
Not quite a first versus second like it maybe looked a week ago after the results last night, but
yeah, City has sort of bounced back. They
got one of their games in hand back.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, so it's going to be what, like second and third, I think, second and third in the table. If we beat them here, we will leapfrog them. They, of course, were sort of slumping after our big beatdown of them in the Open Cup. They lost 2 games, I think drew 1. Since then, they beat New England 4-2. I believe 3 of those goals were on penalties. And last night they beat Dallas 1-0 in Dallas. I know very little about that game. I think I saw Eber scored. But we're playing them again, and seems like an opportunity to really knock them on their ass again.
They dipped their toes a little deeper into the Cushing zone by winning a couple games.
That's true.
Man.
I hope. Oh, yeah, they are further in the zone.
Right.
I hope that, like, the one game where all these offensive issues didn't seem to take place was when City was kind of just shitting their pants against us, right? Where it seemed like we were creating chances and like they were more clear cut. So, like hopefully we see a continuation of that and City like keep being like really weak bitches that we play against.
Didn't one of their players, was it Keaton, who came out and
beautiful football
gave a quote no since then about like we sometimes maybe get a little bit mentally weak and we should work on that.
Yeah, there I can't remember which one specifically, but yeah, one of their players did say that we need to maybe not let ref decisions let us boil over so much.
The player who was on yellow card suspension didn't get suspended, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Well, he'll get suspended in our game, surely.
Yeah.
But
I think that was Collins.
Yeah, but I was going to say, like, this comes in well with the we foul a lot, I feel like, narrative. Because if we, like, get through this game, too, and it was, like, a really, like, messy game where we get away with a lot of, like, kind of rough hits or whatever, I'm going to love that. Because I really like being in this kind of position where everyone, like, bitches and moans about the way that we play.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's something that I enjoy because that means that we're winning, right?
It does seem like the tide has turned a bit on that. Beginning of the season, it seemed like we genuinely did not know how to avoid fouling when we didn't want to. And now it seemed to have reached a little bit more of an understanding of how to control the game by playing rough, which I think is a big part of why our form has improved recently, or maybe an undersold part of it.
The game management aspect, maybe?
Yeah, or just
I mean,
even
also,
just it seemed like literally like in those home points we dropped, we a lot of times when we're going for a ball in the midfield, especially up in the air, our midfielders seem to not wanting to foul and getting whistled for something that was driving them insane, and we seem to have figured that out better.
But also, like, the way that we waste time and do stuff like that has also gotten better, too.
That's true. So I think we have everyone available, right?
Kinda. It's getting that way.
Lucas Monzon still.
Yeah. Lucas Monzon was getting braces in Uruguay last year, so I don't think he'll be featuring. I don't think he'll be featuring again, quite honestly. He's gonna join. He's gonna go to Fort Benning with Isiar Drame and fucking whoever else we mentioned earlier. But anyway,
Duca, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, satire. But anyway, it's getting that way. Andres Reyes had a nice little cameo in the last game, so he's fit to hit the field apparently now. Dylan Nealis will be back from suspension. You can always put Drew Yearwood out on the field again, but
It's an option.
you can always put Caden Clark on the field again, but yeah, no. Beyond that, it does seem like we're as close to full fitness as we've been in a while, all year, really. So, we'll see, kind of, especially for a big game like this, a little bit of a window into maybe what our like sort of go-to 11 might be. Hopefully it's the 3 in the back,
right,
as we've kind of come to a consensus
agree.
on. So
hopefully we also like draw some red cards from them so they carry over into other games as well.
Well, true.
So I guess to close this out, we can just talk lineup broadly. I mean, 3 in the back agreed across the board. Are there any other decisions?
Would the 3 in the back be Long, Nealis, and Reyes?
I mean, that could be the ticket.
Also, is Cameron Harper the right wing back now? Or is it going to be some combination of Dylan Nealis and Tom Edwards?
Tom Edwards is not really ever featured in that like front running wing back role.
No.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting if he's there, but I
predict Edwards is starting at center back this game.
Him as a wild card being what it is. I think both Harper and Dylan Nealis have made, like we were talking earlier, have made strides in the last few weeks, and I would trust either of them in a right wing back role, especially if we have depth and we can pull them if it's not necessarily working out. So
I've decided Tolkien and Tom Edwards need to play this game.
Yeah, Edwards.
It's an Edwards kind of tone kind of game.
I love Reyes, obviously, but Edwards has to be on the field because I think he's a big reason why they lost their cool so quickly.
Yeah.
Costers too. I think it's a nice compliment with Costers because Costers is the kind of thing where he'll clatter someone, but then really sells it and maybe genuinely actually means it, where he'll be like, I don't understand what went wrong. I don't know what the issue is. It's like, huh? I just showed up here. Is that not part of the game?
Yeah.
And I think that really, the 1-2 really upsets them with Edwards' bit and that bit. But yeah, other than that, I would expect to see, I still would rather see Klimala start up top, and then front six, I guess is really just there's a question of whether we see Omir in there or not, right? Am I forgetting something? I mean, it would just be Morgan, Klimala, Lucanius.
That's been kind of the pivot between, whether you have Omir as like that extra attacking mid and like adding in like kind of a 3 attacking mid line versus having Morgan and Lucanius just kind of play almost as extra forwards sometimes.
But he hasn't really started there in a while, has he?
Well, I guess the KC game, though. Right, and then he came out after 26 minutes. Yeah,
so, which I don't, and again, it's been kind of part of the offensive struggles the last couple of weeks. I don't like the way the team looks when Omir isn't there, sort of linking things between the front three. Yeah. So, that'll be an interesting kind of mix to it as well. I mean, we could just, see a wild card and see like, Clark or Serwada or maybe even Yearwood playing as a 10 instead of Omir and him being more of kind of like a deeper attacking mid. But that'll be an interesting little pivot to the lineup.
I feel like we're going to see a bit of Ngoma this game regardless. He seems to have, like, just from his one appearance, have gotten into the good graces of being on the bench every game after that.
I hope only if we're winning, though. To be honest, I'll be annoyed if we're chasing the game and we throw him on there.
I feel like he's going to come on if we're trailing because that's what he did last time.
All right. I got to say, sorry to be a bit of a downer. I try to avoid it on derby games. I don't think City necessarily have the mental strength in them or that great, but I do worry that this recent run of our form, particularly how we're playing, like you described earlier in the episode, Cork, of us just kind of maybe relying on golazos and set pieces more than we really realize, does sort of seem plausible that the team could get complacent. The Red Bulls could get complacent. I don't think, I'm not that scared of City. It's happened before. It's happened before.
Like, I just think they're so much weaker than us mentally this year.
Yeah, but
they might have been woken up by how much. I mean, it sounds like from that one quote that they might have been woken up by how much they shit their pants in the cup game. Like, so we'll see.
But things aren't going to go their way. Like, I just that's
one can hope.
Yeah. I don't think they're gonna like dominate or beat us. I could definitely see us coming out and sleeping for an hour and then being like, oh wait, whether that means it'll be 0-0 at that point or like 1-0 and we just kind of let a cheapie in, I could see either. Or us even winning at that point. But I do worry that the team might be a little bit like, oh, good, we proved ourselves. We beat these guys in the Open Cup. So that will be in the back of my mind. Obviously, I'm still going to say, 9-0.
Yeah. But 11-1, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Careful now. Gilbert.
Yeah.
Gilbert. Any parting thoughts about this? This is gonna be a long one, but we're gone for 2 weeks, so it works.
Yeah. Beat City. Don't lose.
Please. When Sam gets back, I can tell him about all of the crazy Red Bull specific stories I have from Ireland. Who would have thought that you'd run into so many Red Bull Universe people across the ocean? I would have thought. Till then.
It's Alex!